This morning we're going to be taking our final look at the letter of 1 Peter, written by Peter to encourage the church during difficult times. We'll be focusing in particular this morning on 1 Peter 5, verses 6 to 11. When we look at this passage, the verse that jumps out most to us is probably verse 7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. It's one of those verses that Christians often like to put on little knickknacks on their shelves or have on a mug. A Christian platitude to offer up when someone's a bit worried or stressed. It's all very well, I think, to quote Bible verses. It's a good thing to learn them. But what does it mean to cast our anxiety? When we're dealing with all the problems of daily life, how is this going to help us? Well, I want to begin by imagining, if you will, a toddler, a small child playing with its toys. Before coronavirus closed everything down, I used to help regularly with the toddler group at the community centre, and quite often I would observe this behaviour among the toddlers. I would see a small child try to pick up a toy that was at least as big as they were, something like a car or a box with lots of toys in it, and they wanted to drag it across the room so that they could play with it. But of course it was too big and too awkward for them, and they would pull and they would heave, they would struggle and fight with it, getting more and more frustrated. Eventually, as happens with all small children, the stress of it all would turn into tears and tantrums as they rolled around on the floor in anger. Until finally, Mum or Dad would come over and pick up the toy and carry it to where it was supposed to be so that it could be played with happily. Well, why am I telling you that little story? So often, I think, we are like small children, dragging our problems with us through life, trying to do it ourselves, pulling and fighting with our worries, while God is standing there waiting to help us, if only we would let him. God cares for us more than the very best parent, and like all good parents, he wants to help us. But he will never force his help upon us. Verse 7, which tells us to cast our cares, is preceded, as you would expect, by verse 6. But these two verses actually make one sentence. In the ESV translation, it's been put together to make that one sentence. And it says this: Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. Humbling ourselves means admitting that we can't do it. We can't fix our problems, that we need help. God is God. Our very existence depends on him. Living humbly under God's mighty hand is trusting our lives, our problems, our cares into his hands. Like a toddler trusting a parent. When we give our anxieties to God, that's a sign of our love and trust for him. And what a relief that should be to us. When our problems are too big for us, then we don't have to keep dragging them along behind us. It's okay to not be able to figure everything out. It's okay to admit that the weight of it is too much for us to carry. As Christ's followers, we don't escape from the troubles of this world, but at the same time, we don't have to keep hold of our anxiety and stress. Cast your anxiety on God. And what exactly does it mean to cast our anxiety? Well, to cast something means to forcefully throw it in a specific direction. Cast your anxieties towards God. Throw them. Launch them away from you into God's hands. Let's think about that though. If you launch something away from you, you can't keep hold of it. And if you're no longer keeping hold of something, if it's no longer in your possession because you've cast it forcefully away into God's hands, what that means is that you can't keep control of it. Casting your anxieties means trusting in God. I think that's where a lot of us have trouble, really, getting hold of these verses, because despite our faith, we like to think that we're in control. Our modern worldview tells us that we're masters of our own destiny. We talk about self-made millionaires. We strive to succeed in life. The most popular song at funerals is Frank Sinatra's My Way. It's why the coronavirus has been such a shock for our society. Suddenly we're not in control. World leaders are struggling to know what on earth to do next. How do we get out of this shutdown successfully? How do we get back our normal life? The air of uncertainty is causing for many people tempers to fray and stress levels to rise. Coronavirus is too big for us to handle. People have become very aware of their own frailty. And without God, the problems are just way too big and scary. Normally, these kind of things seem to happen to other people in faraway countries. But coronavirus has come knocking on our front door with all the associated worries about health, job security, the children's education, being stuck at home, isolated from friends and family, wondering when on earth we're going to get out again. Being a Christian doesn't make us immune from any of these problems. It doesn't exempt us from suffering. In fact, Peter tells us in verse 9 that as Christians we are to expect suffering. But he also goes on to say in verse 10 that the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. Whatever you're going through right now, God is there with you. He's waiting with arms outstretched to catch all of your anxieties and worries. If you will let go and cast them towards him, there is no problem too big, no anxiety or fear that he cannot catch hold of for you. But you have to trust him. You have to trust in his grace. And as we trust in God and lean on his strength, letting go of our own desire to be in control, it's then that God is able to restore us, to make us strong, firm, and steadfast. God cares for you. His love for you has no limits. Cast all your cares on the Lord, for he will sustain you. Amen.